The movie opens up with a football recreation, wherein we meet our young major person, Mark Evans. He's having a very good time gambling, but abruptly his dad Jack seems on the sphere with a grim face. Seeing this, Mark realizes that something is inaccurate and straightaway approaches him. Losing no time, the duo rushes to the clinic. Here, we research that Mark's mom, Janice, is unwell with most cancers and is in a very vital kingdom. She simply desires to see her son one final time sitting beside his mother. Mark promises her that she won't die and that he's going to do the whole lot to maintain her alive. Janice also smiles at him and asks him to take care of himself. She tells Mark that she'll constantly be with him, but the little boy can't receive that. Sadly, a few moments later, Janice passes away and the scene shifts to the funeral. At his mom's funeral, Mark cries and keeps to himself, staying away from the visitors and his father. In the meantime, Jack talks to his brother Wallace approximately how he cannot go away for an essential business trip and depart. Mark at the back of listening to this. Wallace gives to host Mark in the meantime and additionally points out that they're our own family now, not strangers, and being round different kids is probably exact for him sooner or later. Jack concurs and comes to a decision to take Mark to Wallace's place in Maine himself so that they can spend time together at the manor too. At Wallace's house, Wallace's residence, Jack attempts to talk to Mark. However, the latter continues to be in denial. Approximately his mom's demise, Jack misses Janice too, however needs Mark to accept that she's gone. After a while they come at Wallace's house and are greeted by using Wallace's daughter Connie and his wife Susan. All through their communique, Connie screams as she sees her brother Henry playfully placing the wrong way up by the stairs wearing a scary mask. Wallace tells Henry to come back down and give Mark a mask too. The latter does the identical, pronouncing that he made one for Mark so they may be like brothers at dinner. Susan tells Jack that she's organized for Mark to speak to a therapist named Alice Davenport who works with Wallace at the health center. At the same time as Jack is away, here Henry playfully kicks Mark and they speedy turn out to be buddies. Henry then teaches Mark the way to open a lobster shell and they each have a brilliant time giggling and having fun. Susan quietly tells Jack that she believes Mark can be quality after dinner. As Jack prepares to depart for Tokyo, he reminds Mark that it is simplest going to be for 2 weeks and that he won't have to depart him once more. He encourages Mark to experience his wintry weather destroy along with his cousins and guarantees they will be together soon. Before he drives away, Mark hugs his father and receives emotional. The next day Mark wakes as much as Henry playing outdoor and makes a decision to enroll in him on his manor down. Mark briefly peeks into an infant's room earlier than heading downstairs. Susan notices him, gives him breakfast and expresses how happy they are to have him while Henry calls out to Mark. Susan eventually shall we him go inside the treehouse. Subsequent scene, Henry takes Mark and Connie to his treehouse, which he constructed by means of himself. Connie, being a little lady, cannot climb this type of peak and watches from below as the two boys get on the pinnacle of the tree. Henry reaches the pinnacle first and as Mark attempts to sign up for him, a branch breaks, inflicting him to hang from the tree with Henry preserving directly to him. At this moment, weirdly, Henry asks Mark if he can fly. Why, if he shall we him cross, but the latter would not solution and continues on asking for help, but Henry pulls him in the treehouse and that they both lie down catching their breath and goofing around. In a while the boys play in an deserted manufacturing unit, breaking windows till they're chased away by using the caretaker Following this, the two run through a cemetery and emerges near a properly right here. Henry mentions that he makes use of it to cover his cigarettes and lights one, encouraging Mark to attempt it despite the fact that Mark mentions that cigarettes can reason most cancers. He makes him try disregarding the health worries, saying that everybody will die besides. Next, Henry asks Mark if he saw his mom after she died, and our boy replies that he wasn't allowed to. Mark's annoyance, Henry requests him to describe what his mom appeared just like the remaining time he saw her, but he gives a description of it, and paying attention to this, Henry describes his own enjoy while his little brother drowned, determined in a bath turning absolutely blue. In a while Henry continues asking Mark about his mother's demise, the latter tells him to stop talking approximately these horrible things. Initially Henry threatens to throw him in improperly, however later apologizes as though not anything had occurred. After apologizing, the duo reconciled with the aid of shaking fingers. The following morning, as Mark and Henry walk by the dock, a dog unexpectedly chases them, making them run for his or her lives. Happily they controlled to reach the stop of the bridge, and Henry closes the door on the canine, leaving it barking angrily. In place of leaving, he name-callings the dog by way of barking lower back, which irritates Mark, prompting him to tug his cousin away from the canine and demand they ought to depart. After this, Henry takes Mark to a cliff overlooking the ocean, wherein Susan often is going in remembrance of her past due son Richard. Henry then invitations Mark to the barking dog, his shed, to reveal him his new invention, a makeshift gun. Pursues it at a cat, and Mark masses it with a bulb, reminding Henry to scare the cat, not damage it. Henry consents, however he misses the cat only by means of some inches. When he shoots, Mark is glad, even as Henry appears upset that he failed to kill the target. Mark starts off evolved, seeing a therapist, Alice Davenport, as Susan had stated before everything. Marcus hesitant to speak, however he ultimately admits feeling by myself after his mother's death. The same night Mark hears a sound in the hall and sees a woman in a white robe taking walks. He thinks it is his mom and follows her downstairs, but it turns out to be Susan. Susan notices Mark and comforts him, assuring him that she's right there with him. Here Mark admits lacking his mother, while Henry quietly watches from upstairs and gets jealous of his mother getting toward Mark. Day after today, Mark performs with Connie, and seeing this, Henry calls him to play out of doors whilst Connie tries to enroll in. Henry pushes her away and takes the makeshift gun to intention on the barking canine. After some time they spot the canine and Henry shoots it, shocking Mark. The dog dies on the spot, and Henry claims that he's only scaring the dog. Next, they take the dead canine to the cemetery and throw it in improperly, after which Henry hums a song, leaving Mark feeling disgusted. In the next scene, Mark is calling at images with Susan, and in one among them sees his mother sporting him as an infant here. Whilst he asks Susan approximately Richard, Henry arrives and invites Mark to his shed. Although Mark hesitates, Susan encourages him to go. Henry takes Mark to the shed and apologizes approximately the canine. He then show Mark a dummy he made, calling it Mr. Tollroad. Mark inquires about what they may do with it, and Henry replies that it depends on whether he's going to help. Soon the two take the dummy outside and highway Mark, regardless of Mark stopping Henry to do it. They throw it off a bridge, inflicting a big car accident. Especially Henry enjoys looking the chaos at the same time as Mark is horrified to their dismay. Police also arrive on the scene, inflicting the men to flee to a tunnel to disguise. Right here, Mark confronts Henry, telling him that he should have killed people, but Henry, unrepentant, implies that Mark would not realize the way to have amusing that night time. Mark listens to the news approximately the accident and is set to tell Wallace what surely happened, but Henry taunts him, suggesting that their father will accept as true with him over Mark. Henry pushes the door to Wallace's office open, however. Afraid, Mark escapes upstairs. Wallace asks what is wrong with Mark, and Henry lies that he's been performing, surprisingly. Subsequent, Connie comes to Henry's room to invite him to head ice skating. However, Henry receives indignant at her, declaring that she entered without asking. Mark defends Connie main to a combat between the boys. Susan intervenes and Henry pretends they have been just gambling. The next day, Alice finds Mark at the playground, where he asks her what makes human beings evil. She then replies that evil is only a phrase people use when they can't recognize a person's movements, and there may be normally a purpose in the back of them. Alice additionally says that she would not believe in evil, and Mark disagrees before leaving to be a part of Connie at some point of dinner. Wallace asks the voice to babysit Connie even as he takes Susan out. Henry tells his mom that Mark wants to circulate into Richard's room, inflicting a heated argument between Susan and Wallace. Wallace thinks it is probably an awesome idea, but Susan is decided to hold Richard's room because it is. Henry enjoys their argument at the same time as Mark tries to inform them that Henry is making it up that night after the dad and mom are long gone. The cousins turn off the lighting fixtures to play disguise and are looking for Henry. Finds Connie first and tickles her. While Mark hears her screams, he receives worried and goes to find them, providing Connie to examine her a tale. Alternatively, later on, Mark sleeps in Connie's room to shield her from Henry. The following morning, Mark wakes up and finds Connie's bed empty. He overhears Susan and Wallace speak about Richard's dying, and Susan blames herself for leaving him on my own wit.